Hi there, I'm Meteorologist Shelby Latino, and over the past couple of days, you may have heard a thing or two about El Nino. You may have heard Godzilla El Nino or record-breaking historical El Nino. Well, those terms can be a little misleading, but they are sparking a lot of questions. And so I'm going to answer the top 5 questions I've been receiving about El Nino right here, right now. But if I don't answer your question, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we'll make sure to get all of those El Nino questions answered. But for now, let's start with number 1, which is when will El Nino hit my house or my neighborhood or the state of California? Here's the thing, El Nino is not a storm. It's not going to hit anything. In fact, El Nino is going to stay in the equatorial Pacific because that's what it is. It's an above average warming of those Pacific waters near the equator. That's it. But that being said, when those waters warm up, they tend to have some global impacts. And we'll talk about those impacts in just a minute. But first, let's talk about the forecast that has everybody talking. And that came down from the CPC there, indicating that there's a 90% chance El Nino will continue and will strengthen. And strong El Ninos tend to have more of those impacts that we're talking about, tend to exhibit more of those qualities of an El Nino. The last time that we saw an El Nino as strong as the one that's being forecasted was back in 1997-98. And there were certainly some big impacts, especially for California. There was a lot of heavy rainfall. There was rain causing mudslides and flooding and things like that. So obviously a big talker, and with the drought, people are very anxious to see if we'll get any above average rainfall this year. In fact, the second question most commonly asked for me is, will El Nino end the drought? And the short answer is unfortunately no. Even a well above average year is not likely to produce enough rainfall to completely cure us of our drought woes. But that being said, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. We obviously want to see at least an average year of rain, but an above average year would be nice. If you remember back in 97, 98, if you were around the area back then, that was actually dangerous. So I don't know that we want to see that much rain all at once. But it would be nice to see an above average year, or at least an average year. We haven't seen one of those in a while. Here's a look at the California drought right now. Since October of 2011, when the drought began, we are missing at least a year's worth of rainfall in most of the state. Now, parts of the Central Valley and even down near Los Angeles are missing over 2 years worth. And I can give you the specifics on Fresno, has about a 20-inch deficit of rainfall. The average in a year is about 11.5 inches. So to catch back up entirely, what we'd need is about 30 inches, if not a little bit more than that, of rain to catch completely back up. Now, to put that in perspective, the 97-98 year that brought all of that rainfall still brought 20 inches of rainfall. So even with a record-breaking year, not likely that we're going to completely cure the drought. The third question is, when will El Nino start? Technically, it started months ago when the CPC issued the El Nino advisory in March. The El Nino advisory, of course, means that those conditions are being observed and they're expected to continue. We're seeing those waters in the equatorial Pacific starting to warm up, and we're expecting them to continue warming or stay above average as we head into the late fall and winter months. So the El Nino advisory status is still going. It's been going since March, so technically El Nino has been going on for a while. But I know what you meant. Okay, when will the rain start? When will we see those impacts from El Nino? Remember what we talked about a little bit earlier. El Nino is not a storm, so it's not going to come on a certain day. It's not going to bring a certain amount of rain. Really, El Nino is just kind of stacking the cards in our favor. It's changing the patterns a little bit, allowing those storms to come a little bit further south and possibly bring some above average rainfall to southern and central parts of California. So, to answer the question, the water year begins in October. Generally, that's the earliest that we really start seeing rain. We have a dry summer and usually a pretty dry start to fall. But in October, that's when we could start to see some rain. The rainiest months, whether it's an El Nino year or a normal year, are usually between December and March. Now, that 97-98 year, we did see some rainfall, close to 2 inches of rain all the way through June of that year. So important to keep in mind that it could last a little bit longer, but also important to keep in mind that not all the impacts are exactly the same. Each El Nino is unique, And as I say that, we get to the last question, which is, so what can we expect? You're telling me that rain is not guaranteed. You're telling me that we could see the mudslides and the flooding. It's a possibility. But what can we expect? What can we hold on to? It's very difficult to say. What I can tell you is what generally happens with an El Nino. And while this is a strong El Nino, you would think that these patterns would be even more true. So I want to tell you what we generally expect from an El Nino. No guarantees, but this is what generally happens. An above average Eastern Pacific hurricane season. Now we'll see a below average Atlantic hurricane season because the water is a little bit cooler over there. We'll also see a cooler than average temperature-wise, a cooler than average pattern in California. Below average precipitation is pretty typical during an El Nino year for the Pacific Northwest. We're talking Oregon and Washington areas, while above average precipitation is possible for Southern and Central California. So that would be really good news for us. And strong El Ninos in the past have led to above average rainfall in Central and Southern California. We'd love, obviously, to see that impact. We would love to see some above average rainfall, even though it's not guaranteed. And we know that those impacts can be pretty strong. Back in 97, 98, it was even dangerous. So we'll be looking forward to see what happens, what plays out this winter. But for now, that's the information I have for you. I hope it helped. If you have any other questions, please feel free to let me know on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Have a great day.